most horrific birth defects caused by the atomic testing at Bikini Atoll were known as jelly babies. Babies that were born with bones that had never hardened. This is the story of the devastating price paid by the people of Bikini Atoll for the United States military progress during the Cold War. The people of Bikini Atoll had lived peacefully until they were discovered on October 1st, 1592 by the Spanish. Later came the Russians, who took them in order to be sex slaves, and the Germans, who forced their labor on coconut fields. In the beginning days of World War II, it was occupied by the Japanese as a stronghold until February 1944, when the battle for Kwajalein killed all but 5 Japanese soldiers. Following World War II, the United States was looking for somewhere to refine its tactics using this new, terrible weapon of the atomic bomb, and it looked to Bikini Atoll. To the U.S. military, this seemed like the perfect place. It was remote and there was hardly anybody around. But there were 167 Bikinians living on the island, comprising 9 different families.
The U.S. military met with them and told them that they would be temporarily relocated, but that it was for the good of humankind to avoid future world wars.
The first-hand accounts of that meeting record that the Bikinians were sorrowful and confused about why they were being asked to leave their island, until finally their king, King Judah, stood up and said, "Everything is in God's hands. We will go." They were relocated to an island called Rongerik, 125 miles away. The Navy Seabees did come in and dismantle their Christian church so they could take that with them, so they would have somewhere to pray. The Bikinians were dropped off there with only a couple of weeks' food. What nobody had bothered to ask is, why did nobody live on Rongerik? There was a long-held tradition that that island was haunted by water demons known as the Girls of Awaja. Nobody lived there because there wasn't enough food to sustain a population. By the time the United States got around to checking on them 2 years later, over half of the population had died of starvation. Meanwhile, the United States military was launching a nuclear hell on their island. 1/7 of all the radiation released by all of mankind fell on that island in 23 nuclear tests. The worst was Castle Bravo, the largest nuclear accident in the world. It was our first fusion bomb, and it was only supposed to be 5 megatons. But the scientists had miscalculated, and it was actually 15 megatons. That meant that the radiation cloud was much larger than had been anticipated. A Japanese ship that was caught in it thought that it was snow, the radiation falling down on them, and the men went out to put their tongues out to catch it. By the time they got back to Japan, they were suffering severe radiation poisoning. And the people of the Bikini Atoll that had been relocated to nearby islands suffered even worse. That is when they began to die of cancers and their babies to be born with horrible birth defects. We won't ever know the full story of what happened to those children, because in their culture they believed that it reflected poorly on the mother if a child was born with birth defects. So they would take these children who were disfigured by the radiation and bury them in the sand to hide them. Finally, in the 1970s, the United States tried to live up to its promise to the people of Bikini to relocate them back to their island. The scientists had said it was okay, but shortly after returning, the Bikinians began to suffer radiation poisoning. The fatal mistake made by the scientists is they based their calculations on the amount of radiation that was in the atmosphere. What they had failed to take into account was that these people needed to eat and to live, that they would grow crops and they would eat the coconuts, all of which had absorbed up the radiation into it and was poisoning them. And so finally, the people of Bikini Atoll were taken once again from their home and distributed among the Marshall Islands. The people of Bikini sued the United States government for $900 billion. The United States settled for $6 million. But as their story became known to the world and public outcry mounted, eventually the United States paid another $180 million into a trust fund for them. They were sued again, this time in the International Nuclear Claims Tribunal, and once again, the United States settled, this time for $530 million. But they didn't see any of that money. See, the United States Congress decided not to pay. By March 2023, all of the money had run out. They had only been receiving about $100 each per month, and even that was gone, and there was nothing left for the people. Today, they're without a home, and they are without compensation. But they carry on the legacy of that radiation. In a little less than a month, I will be among those people, and I will be at Bikini Atoll. And one of the reasons why I'm going is to tell their story, so people don't forget.